Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
Hey, so I'm here with Public Information Supervisor Roger Phillips, and we're just going to have a quick chat with our deer and elk coordinator here, Toby Boudreau, and to kind of get an update on the big game season settings proposals, which are going to be coming out here pretty shortly. And public comment opportunity is going to be opening up on February 8th all the way to February 22nd. So let's talk with Toby and kind of hear what to expect in some of these big game season setting proposals. Toby?
So upcoming, starting probably in about a week and a half or 2 weeks, we'll have the proposals for the big game season setting process that will come out to the public, and we'll be looking for any and all input from across the state, of course. We've got some potential changes in places, and other places will sort of just stay the same. But yeah, there's some big ones to look for. Primarily, if you hunt the Dvorak zone, there's going to be a proposal to change Dvorak elk hunting that a working group got together and met over the course of a year to come up with some new ideas, which people should look at if they hunt the Dvorak zone for elk. And also in the southeast region, they're going to be proposing some changes to mule deer hunting as an experiment to look at ways to improve buck survival. So there'll be at least one proposal to talk about that, and that'll be interesting. And
what's some of the rationale behind the Dvorak change?
The Dvorak change really is about getting people from all the facets of hunting together in a room and talk about ways to increase the number of branch antler bulls on the hillside. So part of the proposal involves cutting out a bunch of antlerless hunting and making the B tag a branch antlered bull only rifle tag, and making the A tag bulls only. And basically the idea is the more cows you leave on the hillside, population's hopefully going to increase, and half the calves they have are bulls. So if you reduce the what's available to hunting by making it branch antlers and not allowing spike harvest, then you increase the number of elk on the hillside. So that's probably the biggest impetus for the whole process.
Okay.
And kind of a side light of that whole proposal is actually to help deal with some of the agricultural damage stuff in a certain part of the Dvorak zone also.
Okay.
So, but, I think the neat component about the whole thing was the fact that we had people representing archery hunters, muzzleloader hunters, rifle hunters, outfitters, and landowners. And I think nobody really felt like, I think everybody gave up a little, but everybody, I think, was able to maintain opportunity, which I think is what Idahoans want as a generality.
Right.
Is the most important thing to Idaho big game hunters is being able to go.
Yeah. You have any questions, Roger?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we come up with every time we go into a season setting cycle is people remember what they saw in the fall, and then they look at our data from winter flights and things like that and say, well, that's not what I saw. So how do you kind of bridge that gap and explain to people that, how things look in the fall isn't necessarily representative of what we're seeing in the winter when we're doing some of our flights?
It's a tough question for people, because what they see on the hillside is what they perceive is out there during hunting season. And, for as far and wide as they hunt, that's what they think is out there. And it's hard because animals move. We've got, and how I explain that to folks, I had somebody, come by the office earlier in the year just after hunting season and tell me that, they definitely saw lower numbers of animals in this one general area. And I had the fortunate ability to look at some of our radio collar data and actually see that most of our radio collared animals didn't even move into the area that this fellow was hunting in until after the season. So it's hard because when you get winter concentrations in places where we are flying, you see a much higher proportion of the deer than during the fall when you're hunting those deer in summer range and transition range, and they're spread out quite a ways, and some don't even choose to move until later in the season, even after seasons have happened. So it is a constant kind of discussion that we have with the public about what their perceptions are based on hunting season and what the realities of what we see during our aerial survey flights. And, right now we just finished up the Weiser elk survey today, and we'll be flying 2 more elk surveys in eastern Idaho and then flying a giant deer survey that basically goes from Boise all the way to Mackay. And obviously, having those deer on terminal winter range makes that work even possible. Otherwise, we don't have enough time to fly all the mountain ridges that those deer are on during the summer. So it's, it is a common problem, and I try to explain it to people and help them understand how this all works, because it is hard when you go out in the fall and you don't see many deer, but yet when you come to a public meeting and you see that we counted, 10,000 deer, in the greater Boise front area, and you think, well, they're not seeing the same deer I'm seeing, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Did the working group kind of shifting gears towards the eastern part of the state, though? Are there any other drastic changes or dramatic changes for eastern Idaho in regards to the winter a couple of years ago?
No drastic changes other than what the working group came up with. And at this recording, the final decision on what is actually going to be put out to the public hasn't been made yet.
Okay.
But they did come up with some solutions and some ideas for an experiment. And the idea is to run the experiment for 4 to 6 years to see if it indeed changes the proportion of bucks on the hillside by still, the idea is to allow people to go hunt still, but yet reduce their harvest of deer. Sort of trying to balance both, but the final proposal has not been finalized in the director's office as of today.
Okay. Is there anything else, Toby, this will air tomorrow on Thursday, the 23rd. So is there anything else leading up to the public comment period that we want folks to know or kind of be aware of?
Well, I think one of the important things is next week is the commission meeting to deal with moose, sheep, and goats. So any hunters that are interested in changes that are going to occur to moose, sheep, and goat regulations, those will be voted on the 29th next week. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. And then shortly thereafter, we'll be, at next week's commission meeting, we'll also be briefing the commission on the results of both of the working groups, the one in Dworshak and the one in eastern Idaho,
okay,
and sort of be able to publicize their proposals and what people are going to see and be able to comment on for the March season setting process, which starts in January and then culminates at the March commission meeting. So
okay,
stay tuned, and I would, keep looking out there for on our website for all the proposals that will be coming out, hopefully in the next few weeks for people to look at.
Cool. That was gonna be my next question. Cool. So we got public comment period starting on February 8th and then closing on the 22nd.
And then can you give us a quick summary on kind of statewide how herds are looking for elk, mule deer, and whitetails, as we've seen them kind of topsy-turvy in the last few years, especially with our deer herds and, due to EHD and then a really hard winter with mule deer. So kind of where are we at on those situations and elk as well?
So as far as mule deer goes in southern Idaho, obviously the 22-23 winter was very hard on them. We lost upwards of 50% of the deer in some spots, localized, and obviously they were affected all the way from the Oregon border to Wyoming and everywhere in between. So this year is really good signs. We've got heavy fawns, some of the heaviest fawns that we've weighed. Commonly a mule deer fawn that is weighed in mid-December or late December weighs on average about 70 to 75 pounds, whereas this year we were weighing a lot of them in the 80s and 90s and even into the hundreds. So heavy fawns mean higher survival, mean heavier fawns actually put out more young when they're females, and they put on bigger antlers when they're males. We also have had really high buck-doe ratios and fawn-doe ratios. So not only are we seeing heavy fawns, but there's a lot of them out there on the hillside, which is also great for mule deer populations. And, obviously, we see these fluctuations in mule deer populations, but honestly, it only takes 3 or 4 good years of moist summers and mild winters to really put mule deer back on track for higher populations. And higher populations mean more opportunity for hunters and more interest in going mule deer hunting. As far as whitetails go, I think we have not seen any big disease outbreaks this past summer, which is really good. Obviously, they suffered a little bit in some places over the winter of 22-23, but they're doing much better. And I think that overall, whitetail populations are rebounding from the big die-off of a couple of years ago when we lost 10 or 12,000 deer at least up in the Clearwater and other places in smaller isolated events. So I think they're doing really well. And the nice thing about whitetail deer is they can rebound fairly quickly when the conditions are good for them. As far as elk goes, so far elk populations are looking really healthy. We just finished an elk survey literally hours ago, and all indications is elk numbers are up in the Weiser and Brownlee zones, but we don't have the final numbers yet to talk about how much. And then we'll be doing elk surveys in the Palisades and in Island Park zones over the next week or so. So we'll have a better idea there. I think the important thing for folks to know is that we only really fly elk surveys somewhere between every 4 or 5 years. An elk zone's flown. And in between that, we actually are developing models so we can estimate populations in between those years based on harvest and other metrics. But realistically, we only have enough staff and helicopters to fly about every 4 to 5 years an elk zone. So last year was kind of a wash because it was so mild. Elk actually didn't even go on to their terminal winter range in the area that we wanted to survey. So we didn't get a survey done last year. And then 2 of the zones that we've been trying to survey for the last couple of years in both last year and this year did not have conditions that were conducive to aerial surveys. So we'll put those on the priority list for next year, and things are looking really good. Haven't seen anything to do. I haven't seen any harvest information yet, but all indications are from the other indexes we use, check stations, and just talking to hunters, that I think the elk harvest was good this year, and I look forward to seeing that data as soon as it comes out.
Awesome. Thanks, Toby. Are you going to be at any of the public comment or open houses? Got to check your Rolodex.
I got to check my check my calendar.
Are you going, Roger? You going to any of them?
Might.
Which one are you going to?
I'd probably go on the Boise ones.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, Toby. Thanks for coming upstairs. I don't have any other questions, but I think we're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Toby.
Thank you.